Hello, I'm Reggie York. This is a proposal on basic tips on the competitive grant proposal. These are just some basic ideas. We'll talk about them perhaps later in greater detail, but this is what we're going to do on this particular presentation. I'm at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify the kinds of organizations most competitive for grants, who does it better than others, more successful than others. Distinguish between grant ideas that are more or less competitive for grants in general. What kind of ideas have more appeal than others? What kinds of things does a foundation not want to be looking for? So how to couch your presentation more competitively. Number 3, identify key lessons learned by experienced grant writers. Let me pose this question: which of these is more likely to be successful? Number 1, a grant proposal for the establishment of a new nonprofit agency that will get its start with the grant funds. Give us your funds, we'll start an agency to do good stuff. Or a grant proposal from a well-established nonprofit agency. I hope you notice that number 2 is far better. Usually number 1 is not a good idea. You're not likely going to be very successful if you're doing number 1. Which of these is most likely to be successful? A grant proposal from an established nonprofit agency, a grant proposal from a profit human service organization, a grant proposal from a governmental organization, a grant proposal from a well-known individual. We're talking, if you look at the top here, about grants from foundations, not grants from government or corporations or the potential sources of grant funds. What do you think? Well, the best answer there is number 1, a grant proposal from an established nonprofit agency. This is usually more successful. And number 4 is usually not eligible. An individual is usually not eligible for a grant from a foundation. How do you establish a nonprofit organization? It's easy to become officially designated as a nonprofit organization. You simply have to do the paperwork and have a designated board with officers and keep up your paperwork when you have to file annual reports, or you might be disqualified as a nonprofit if you fail to do that. It's easy to become a nonprofit success officially. It's not so easy to be a viable nonprofit, which we'll speak about in just a minute. An agency is designated as nonprofit from Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. This entitles your agency to avoid paying taxes. You sometimes see people referring to an organization as a 501c3 organization. That means it's nonprofit. What is a viable nonprofit organization? It is more difficult to be a viable nonprofit than it is just to be one. You should have an active board of community leaders. You should have a sound administrative structure for accounting, budgeting, personnel, and so forth. There are lots of small, what you might call mom and pop nonprofits all over the country. Very small, got established by well-meaning people, leaders, but are really small and don't have a good infrastructure for things like accounting, budgeting, personnel, and so forth. So funding sources are going to be reluctant to give funds to such an organization. They don't know how well those funds will be used, whether the accounting procedures will be up to standard, and so forth. You should have a good record of offering service in the past. Let me make a quick note about research grants. This course of study is about program grants. The federal government, however, provides funding opportunities for research grants. The research grant opportunity normally starts with the letter R, R107 or something of that nature. That usually designates it as a research grant, so be sure you don't look at that when you're looking for a program grant. These R grants are for doing research, not delivering service. even though service may be a part of what you're going to be doing. But they're looking for heavy hitter research people to do that, not the kinds of people who are likely taking this course and reviewing this particular presentation. Now let's talk about ideas for grant proposals. Okay, which of these ideas is best? An appeal to the funding source to support the agency because it is doing good work and has lost funds. Is that likely to be successful? Or let's take another option. What about this one? A proposal for funding a program that addresses an important need, such as preventing delinquency, enhancing recovery from substance abuse, and so forth. So what do you think? I hope you said number 2 is better, because it certainly is better. Funding sources want to address needs. Which of these ideas is best? Number 1, a proposal for funding a new program that addresses an important need and might lead to new ideas for serving the target population. Or a proposal for funding a well-established program that needs more money. What do you think? Okay, number 1 is right. Number 1 is right. Which of these ideas is best? A proposal that asks for funds on a time-limited basis, like 1 or 2 years? Or a proposal for funds that might need to be given on an extended basis, which is likely to be more successful? I hope you said number 1. If you did, you are correct. What about these ideas? A proposal to extend the services of an existing program to a new population of underserved individuals. Or a proposal for extending the services of a program to the same population because there is a waiting list. Well, I hope you said number 1, because there's something special about number 1. Funding sources like something special there, not just continuing what is, but they want to be able to do something special. The specialness of number 1 is you have a new population of underserved individuals being potentially served. Now let's look at some ideas from experienced grant writers. What about this? Is it a good idea to not establish communication with persons from the grant funding source until you have submitted your grant proposal? Does this sound like a good idea? Do you think this came from experienced grant writers? No. Instead, what they said was, when you talk with different people with lots of experience with this, you'll find them saying things like, be in communication with persons from the funding source from the beginning of the process and throughout the writing of the proposal. More is better. More lessons learned. See if a funding source has a vested interest in your geographic region. Clarify very initially when you're thinking about a particular funding source, if they have a geographic area that's their exclusive area for service. And if you're not a part of that, of course, then you're not eligible, so you need to move on to look for a different funding source. Should you keep in a state of ongoing communication with funders? Yes, that's what was has been noted by various people with lots of experience with grant writing. Also maintain a high investment of energy of key actors. Keep things going. You need a good leader to keep the investment the energy going well and communication flowing and so forth. When efforts were not successful, what people will tell you often is they made too many assumptions from looking at the funder's website, as opposed to communicating individually with people from the funding source. Only small number of contacts with the funders, or finding, of course, that the funding agency had little interest in the geographic region, I might add also, or the particular target population that you are addressing in your funding proposal. Idea for a grant was not well thought through prior to contact with the funder. You should think through the idea, have a good idea what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. Even though you haven't put together the proposal before you first contact them, be in a position to answer questions that convince them that you got a good idea. Okay, so we've covered some ideas about being competitive. This is the first lessons in that. Let me summarize. Funding sources want to save the people, not save your agency. No matter how good you think your agency is, they want to save the people. You got to focus your attention on people's needs rather than agency's needs. You should have an idea that is special in some important way. You must not only have a good idea, but show that you have a viable agency that can deliver the goods. Next, don't be shy about contacting the funding source early in the process. That is the end of the presentation. I hope this will be of help to you.